The following program contains mature language and potential spoilers. Listeners be advised.
My name is Miles Morales.
From the minds that brought you the Lego Movie and the Lego Batman movie.
This kid can turn himself invisible. Watch this.
I can't do it on command.
He can't do it on command. Show him the zappy thing, Miles.
Can't do it on command.
Can't do it on command. But he can do so much more.
Just those two things.
Just those two things.
Into the Spider-Verse, only in theaters December 14th.
The Marvel superheroes have arrived. Captain America,
Fantastic Four,
Hulk, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Spider-Woman, the God of Thunder,
Real quick, go check out the Spider-Verse movie. That movie is fucking phenomenal. It's right up, like, SJW bullshit. You're gonna love it. Like, I'm just gonna tell you one thing, and I'm not ruining the movie for you. There's a scene. Well, you, no. The mother's Hispanic. You know that, right? Grace. Okay. She speaks Spanish. She speaks Spanish on the screen, and I took my boy with me, and he looked over and said she spoke Spanish. I heard that several times in the theater where kids really were freaked out that a character was speaking Spanish. He spoke Spanish, and I was just like, whoa, that was cool.
One of the reasons why I was interested is I was reading a review of the movie on The Root, which I think it was The Root, and it's a black website. It's mostly black men who write for it. There's some women, but it's mostly these like guys. And so the writer was saying that he had expected to hate the movie. He was going in thinking this was going to suck, and he was won over in part by how black it was. That it reminded me a lot of seeing Black Panther and being shocked at how much he saw his culture actually reflected in the movie and not just being tokenism. And also, again, the Latin element, that there's more Spanish spoken in that movie than pretty much any other American movie, in recent memory. So I'm interested. I'm just not a Spider-Man fan, so that's the big. And I'm not a big CGI. I don't really like computer generated animation movies. I'm not a Pixar guy.
That's the thing, though. This animation is not Pixar. This is literally moving artwork. I'm telling you, there were scenes that I got a little teary-eyed because I was like, that is so beautiful to look at. The way the motion is happening, it is so beautiful. It was like artwork in motion. Everyone around me was just blown away how good it was. Like, I was shocked because I like Spider-Man. I'm not a huge Spider-Man guy. I like Spider-Man. And even I was like, damn, this was actually really, story was engaging. Characters were great. All the characters, they did their little bits. It was fun. When we walked out, people were clapping as the movie ended. Even the stinger, people were losing their shit. I was surprised. And so I can't say enough good things. I was shocked how much, because even I saw the previews for it, and I'm like, the animation looks weird. Like, I'm going to get annoyed by that. Your brain adjusts to what it's doing, and then you accept it, and then you fall into it. It's one of those things where it forces you to accept what it is, and then you have to fall into it. You can't fight it. If you fight it, you're not going to enjoy it. I was surprised how much I enjoyed it, and I know you are. I can already tell you're going to be like, well, it's actually good. You're not going to praise it, but you'll like it.
Okay. It's a movie about multi-dimensional Spider-Man. It's a hard sell for me, but I'm still, because it's been so heavily praised, I'll probably check it out.
Can you do me a favor, Diablo Frank?
What's that?
Don't put the audio stripped trailer of every single across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse trailer in this podcast, please.
Okay.
Pick one. I'll give you one trailer. You can pick one trailer, and I'll let you use the Prowler audio when we're talking about that. The rest of it, no fucking trailers.
Okay, so what was the issue with that one? What's the provocation on this?
I don't know. I don't remember which. I think all of our podcasts, you at some point, you put at least 2 full audio trailers in, and the trailers are like 3 minutes long now. So there's 6 minutes of just audio of a trailer.
I don't think that's what happens. I think what happens is I usually what I'll sometimes do is I'll take parts of one and another one and I'll mix them together, and so you might get a full 3 minutes out of it that way. I don't think I have too many instances where it's like just 2 trailers combined. It's 6 minutes long, because I would get tired of that too. So probably what's happened is it might be that I'm taking 2 trailers, mixing them together, and you might end up with 4 minutes instead of 3 minutes. As a for instance.
It's just a long time.
I'm not doing that. I'm not putting in, this is very low effort. It might be 2 30-second TV spots, one for into and one for across. I'm not putting any effort in. I'm tired. I don't want to fuck with it. I've got that switch in my brain where I just, every time I was going to try to approach doing anything podcasting since we hung out, and even before then, really, it's just my brain is like, no, I don't want to. And I just like, okay, fine, you're right, brain. I'm not going to do this shit.
Miles, being Spider-Man is a sacrifice. You have a choice between saving one person and saving every world.
I can do both.
You can't run forever, kid.
We are supposed to be the good guys.
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Only in movie theaters June 2nd.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Marvel Superheroes Podcast. I'm Illegal Machine, and with me is
Diablo Frank.
And today we're going to talk about, what is this thing called?
And Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, Into, Across, and Around About the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. So
this is the sequel to the was it 2019?
Well, we're gonna. I assume we're gonna talk about both because we never recorded on the first one anyway.
Okay, shit.
So, and actually, let's just go all the fucking way back. Like the Ultimate line was coming out toward the end of the time of our shop, and you're working in a shop and everything. Did you ever indulge in any of that stuff, particularly the Ultimate, since that was the Avengers of that group?
No, because I fucking hated it. That was all Mark Millar shit, right? Where
him and Bendis were the main two guys.
Fucking Bendis. So it had to be, Tony Stark's a gay asshole. Captain America's a fucking piece of shit. And you know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, a piece of shit racist.
Nationalist, yeah.
I mean, the only cool thing was that Nick Fury was Samuel L. Jackson. Like, that was the only cool thing. The rest of it, I thought the armor sucked.
The weird fucking helmet, like the triangular looking helmet and shit.
Right, like it was kind of like Guardian a little bit or something. It did not look good. And wasn't Hulk all weird too? Wasn't he child molester or some shit?
Yeah, he was trying to like rape Betty while he was the Hulk. And so they're like chasing him around with his Hulk dick trying to fuck her, and they're like, we need to save her from this murder by cock. So yeah, it's fucking gross. All that shit was gross. And then didn't they like strip the Wasp at some point, or she like flashed somebody her titties to get him to follow her or some stupid shit like that?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, none of that was my bag.
Nope. Yeah.
None of it was my bag. It was all that we got to anti-hero the shit out of this
shock jock
hard
bullshit. Look at how fucking edgy we are.
Exactly. So no, I that was part of me. It was doing nothing but affirming that I needed to stop collecting comic books because they were getting better creative teams in the actual like books that I wanted to read. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, so this is what it took to get a good artist and a good and quote unquote name writer on an Avengers book, right? Mm-hmm. Like you couldn't put it on an actual Avengers book. I suffered through the fucking Crossing and Heroes Reborn. Heroes Return was a little bit better, but and whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. And then I'm right there with you. It's like I had already been thoroughly disaffected from Marvel at that point. There were very few other series I was following regularly in that time period, like Black Panther. I just didn't care about the Marvel Universe proper, much less an alternate edgelord version of it. It is funny, though, because so much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was based on the Ultimates line, and I'm thankful that they chose the right things to model off of and giving you sort of a more grounded Marvel Universe until they could build up to being more fantastical. That was the aspect that they needed to take and seemed to work. I'm glad they didn't take all that incest stuff and all just the nonsense.
Yeah, no, that you nailed it. But look, Brian Hitch rocks. Like I wish he would have done actual Avengers. Or did he do actual Avengers?
I don't think so.
Who came in after Perez? Am I thinking
that was Kieran Dwyer and Alan Davis. Yeah, Alan Davis.
Alan Davis. I get.
Yeah, and see, it's funny because of course he started out as a clone of Alan Davis, but then evolved into that hyper realistic style, and now they don't really look a lot alike. But there's still some similarities there. But yeah, no, Alan Davis on Avengers, I'm actually pretty keen on. I really like his take on that team, and I ordered, if I recall correctly, an Avengers trade that Paul Levitz and Alan Davis was doing, where it's more of like Avengers Across Time or something. So I can kick that your way if you have any interest in that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Avengers kept pretty good quality after Perez left, but after, was it Sean Chin? Who was doing Iron Man with Kurt Busiek first?
Yeah,
that was
Sean Chin. Right? That's right. Mm-hmm.
After Sean Chin left, it went in the fucking toilet.
Yeah.
When Joe Quesada took over.
Well, didn't Frank Thierry do it for a little bit as well?
Yeah.
These are not the guys you think of that needs to be worked. Oh, Mike Grell had his little run on that.
Yeah, Grell came in and it was like, maybe, and it was like, it's boring. Mm-hmm. But still, Mike Grell is not. He's not.
That's one of the last. That's one of the. I mean, he wasn't drawing it either. I mean, Mike Grell's a famous artist. He's a writer that I think people tolerate for the artwork more often than not. He's not like, he's never been a hot writer. People buy the books that he writes that he also draws, not so much the other stuff.
Yeah, I think he might have done some did he even do any?
I think he did a little bit of
art,
like maybe some covers or something, but he didn't do any interiors. That would have been kind of interesting, but he's not a shiny artist. He's not somebody who would put a gleam on the Iron Man armor. So
yeah, Ryan Odagawa, is that who it was?
That sounds right. Yeah. That's one of those guys that was around in that time period that everyone forgot afterwards.
That was definitely a guy around. Okay.
So
yeah, no, was not an Ultimates guy, but you were 100% correct that there are a lot of elements, especially with Cap's costume, things like that were very Ultimates-y.
Mm-hmm. And then, you had the rather popular run of Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley on Ultimate Spider-Man, which is, of course, a retelling of the origin in a more modern context, which I don't think had much of an influence on the Raimi movies, but I do think it had an impact on the Andrew Garfield stuff. And ultimately, the Ultimates kind of wore out because they basically took all the stuff that worked for the Ultimates and put that into the proper Marvel universe, and all the dumb shit they sort of left behind, and it sort of ate itself. And like all the stupidity just sort of like compounded until the line essentially imploded with the Ultimatum. Plus, bringing in Jeff Loeb is always a bad idea if you want to maintain a universe. And I think part of that was that they killed off the Peter Parker of the Ultimates line because it just didn't make sense to have that many Peter Parkers around, especially since Bendis was a lot more true to the lore of Spider-Man than the other guys, particularly Mark Miller, was to X-Men. I think Robert Kirkman had a run on there at some point too, and he was doing grimdark shit as well. And so they killed off Peter Parker, and then they brought in this new kid, Miles Morales. And I don't even know if you were still like involved with comics by the time he came in. Was that even a thing in your time?
No.
Yeah. I think that was after the shop had already closed. I think I remember seeing that talked about when I was going to somebody else's shop before I gave up on going to comic shops at all. And, he's like, okay, cool. They got this kid. It's a black kid. He's got a different costume. They're trying to do something different with Spider-Man. Cool. I don't give a shit about Spider-Man. I don't really give a shit about the Marvel Universe, especially at that point in time. And so it just never was relevant to me. And so there were definitely people who talked about how cool he was and liked him and supported him. And he was so popular that they folded him into the main Marvel Universe, along with a few other odds and sods elements. So there's still a bit of Ultimates in the Marvel Universe, but I think they finally fully consolidated that stuff after Secret Wars, the remake. And so he's just been there. He's just another guy that happens to have Spider-Man type powers. And they started doing that thing too, like with Superman, where you've got all these different variations on the same thing. There's so many spider characters now. Like, are you familiar with all these different spider characters that have been introduced in the last 10, 15 years?
I mean, I know about like Spider-Gwen, which I think is one of the top like 5 worst superhero names in the history of all of comic books.
Well, it was something that was supposed to be disposable. Like, if they thought that character was going to have the longevity that she had, that would not be the name they chose. That was supposed to be, she was supposed to like probably die again or something. I don't think she was supposed to stick around.
It's fucking, it reminds me of, and I hate to say it, it's like the Houston Texans, our football team.
Ugh, so terrible.
One of the stupidest fucking names I've ever heard in my life. It really rolls off the tongue. Well, yeah, it's because you live in Houston, Texas.
Right.
And that's really close to Houston Texans. That's the only reason it rolls off the tongue. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Spider-Gwen, instead of Spider-Man, it's just her. Shouldn't he be Spider-Peter?
Right.
Like, what? It's the stupidest shit ever. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Taking us down to a bad place already, yeah.
But when I hear about that, I'm like, ugh, eye roll. I think any variation of the Spider-Man costume looks amazing because the actual Spider-Man costume looks so amazing. And as long as you keep the eye element and you keep some webs on it, and then you keep the motion the same, every fucking costume is going to look pretty cool. And I think Spider-Man 2099 galvanized that. It doesn't matter what you do to that costume, as long as it looks kind of like Spider-Man's costume, it's going to look amazing. So I like Spider-Gwen's costume. I like the hood. So when I was like, wow, that's a really dumb name. Looks cool, right? And I'd heard about Miles Morales and his costume looks pretty cool, and then I heard, but to me, that's been way more palatable than like the Deadpool universe where there's all these stupid fucking Deadpool versions.
Right, Gwenpool. The Gwen from yet another alternate universe that became a Deadpool instead of a Spider-Man. Fucking kill me.
Way more eye rolls for all that junk than I do for any of the Spider-Man stuff. I mean, there's always been, the Clone Saga was my heyday of comic book collecting. So multiple Spider-Men existing is not some weird alien thing to me. And Venom. Venom was just a spin-off of Spider-Man, right? He's basically just the evil Spider-Man. Yeah. This is not a new thing for Spider-Man. So yeah, Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl, they're all over. They've always been all over the place. So I didn't have a problem with it. I just was like, Spider-Gwen specifically. Worst fucking name I've ever heard. But I didn't have a problem with her existing.
Well, and it's also one of those things where it's like Captain Marvel, where you can't call him Shazam because if he calls himself Shazam by name, then he loses his powers, right? So it's like your name's Spider-Gwen, but you can't can't ever call yourself Spider-Gwen. Nobody can call you Spider-Gwen in public. So it's just a fucking useless name. And I don't know if you know, but they've started trying to call her Ghost Spider. So we'll see how that takes off.
Don't fucking care.
Right.
Continue.
Don't care. Don't really care. Yeah. So this movie came out in 2018. Did you see it theatrically?
No.
Yeah, none of us were rushing out to see this. I think Fix is the only one who actually saw it theatrically. I talked to Paquita, and she swears that we saw it in a theater, and it's possible, but I have no recollection of that, and it's weird to me that I would have seen that in a theater and we wouldn't have recorded something on it. It feels like that's the sort of thing I would wait for home viewing on, but the one thing I do think might make her correct in my mind is the Prowler effect, that booming sound that you get with every other Prowler. I watched the movie again on TV, and it just is not the same as it was the first time I saw it. So maybe I did see it theatrically, but not on purpose. It must have been that it got so much praise that maybe that drove me to check it out in the theater.
Well, I mean, I think there's two branches to this. It could be you saw it, we didn't talk about it because you hate Spider-Man. The other possibility is that you didn't see it because you hate Spider-Man. So unfortunately, we're still left with the same questions.
Well, I will say that having seen the first movie, I was impressed enough by it that I was inclined to want to record on it, and the timing never worked out. So that was definitely a part of it. How long did you wait before you saw it?
A long time.
Oh yeah,
long. I may not have seen it until 2021.
Wow. Okay.
Like a long time. And I mean, spoiler. I waited too long. I waited too long. Anyway, I'm not going to Mr. Fix It. I don't know if you want to recap the movie at all. I'll talk about it. Or it's been out for so long. I love Into the Spider-Verse.
It's really
so good.
Given how much I hate Spider-Man and all that mythos, the way that his stories are told, the type of character he is, the friendly neighborhood guy, the low stakes, accidental hero stuff. I hate that shit, but it was really good here. It actually really worked in this movie.
So good. And then, we'll talk about it with Across the Return to the Spider-Verse or whatever. It's visually, it's just a jaw-dropping movie. Just nothing even close to that thing in animation.
Actually, what I thought about a little bit was the Ang Lee Hulk, and like he was trying to do something like what they ultimately did, and like night and day. It's so much better done here, where you capture so much comic bookisms in a way you just cannot do in live action, but it works so perfectly, and they take comic book shit and make it cool.
Yeah, it's like if they gave James Gunn $500 million to make an animated movie, right? Like the soundtrack's banging, the art is like something that nobody else would have thought to put. You know what I mean? It's so some of the stuff James Gunn comes up with. It's just like there's no way a normal studio would have come up with that. You need a comic nerd to have done this, but also a music nerd to pair the music with the comic book, because that was a whole other layer to Into the Spider-Verse. Was the music is just great. The vibe is amazing. The story is a story. I mean, it's not like, although it was.
It's a Spider-Man origin story. It's a different Spider-Man, and so there's tweaks to it, and it's definitely modernized, but ultimately it's still the basic Spider-Man origin story.
Right. Yeah. It's his uncle dying, but it's not Uncle Ben. It's Uncle Criminal Prowler, right?
It's a good thing the black guy wasn't Uncle Ben. Let's just say that.
Oh, yikes. Goodness gracious. Edit that out.
Say Uncle Ben.
The Kingpin, amazing in that movie. Just everything about it was just great. Even like the weird, stupid multiverse leaps that you should be rolling your eyes on. You're just completely bought in. Who cares? Right. It's great.
You're definitely not seeing the female Dr. Octopus coming. You're not even expecting what's Kingpin
Who's
doing
amazing.
in this? Yeah. They've got Tombstone in the mix. I've always loved Tombstone. That's a guy who never gets representation in media. So even though he doesn't do a lot in the movie, I'm still like, look, it's Tombstone.
Yeah. And he looks awesome. Prowler, the Prowler noise is iconic.
I kind of wonder.
My kids watched this a couple months ago for the first time. Then when they watched it again, getting ready to go see Across the Spider Return. What the fuck is this thing called again? Return to the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
But to be prepared for Across the Spider-Verse, we watched it again, and like my oldest was just like, "What's that sound whenever the Prowler comes on?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "That's the sound." And I was like, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's look it up. So I was playing the sound off YouTube. Like there's just that sound effect on YouTube. And he's all like, why does it do that? And I'm like, that's just his sound when he comes on screen. You mentioned it too. This is like a random 7-year-old kid. And even he was like, couldn't get that noise out of his brain. That's how great They paired
it's kind of
the
like
sounds
that
with
Christopher Nolan woo sound you get that they used in all the trailers, because it just fucking gets you into that epic headspace. And it's like Prowler had his own, and it's fucking cool as shit. And I wonder a little bit too, because especially with all the purple they mixed into there and the way his body motion stuff, I'm wondering if maybe there's a little bit of influence on what they ended up doing with Black Panther. I know that they came out the same year, but animation takes a hell of a lot longer than live action. And I kind of wonder if maybe they bid a little bit off of Prowler for Black Panther.
Bit of a leap, but I mean, whatever floats your boat.
And see, I have to say too, I've always had a kind of a soft spot for the Prowler. I think it was, I don't know if it was before or after my grandmother died, but I was going through one of her closets. I think she might have been in the hospital at the time. And I found what must have been one of my uncle's old Spider-Man comics. And I think it was Amazing Spider-Man 93 or maybe 80 something. I don't know. Anyway, it was like one of the early appearances of the Prowler. It wasn't his first appearance, but it was like second or third appearance or so. And he's cover featured as a John Romita senior issue. And he just looked really cool. I liked the purple and green. He was kind of otherworldly, and he had the claws at a time when hardly anybody had claws. And so it was much more novel. And even though I'm finding this in, the late 80s or so, it's still like one of the oldest and coolest comic books I'd had at that time period. And to uncover this thing was such a surprise, because my uncle wasn't a Spider-Man guy at all. He was in the trippy head drip character, so I don't even know why that comic book ever was in the house at all. But because the Prowler's in it, and because it's such a cool cover, seeing him so well represented in a movie, it spoke to me personally, because that was part of my own childhood.
Yeah, and the Prowler. I've never been into the Prowler in the comic books like you were, but.
Well, he's a much dorkier character in the comics than he was in the movie. The movie, he's a fucking badass.
Yeah, whereas I've always thought Tombstone looked awesome in the comic books. And then they did nothing to change his look for the movie, because he, in fact, looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that movie's awesome. I was very much anticipating this movie, but also was trying to figure out what the fuck is taking so long. Like, why is it taking you so long to produce this next animated movie? Everybody, because I think it was didn't it win an Academy Award for Best Animated?
I know it was nominated. I don't know if it won or not, but it was definitely nominated. And again, nobody expected this, because the movie, when it came out, it did not blow the doors off in any way, shape, or form. I think it came out in the high 30s initially, which is fucking nothing. And what happened was it had legs. As people saw it, were like, oh my fucking god, you need to see this movie. And that might have been my situation. Maybe it was weeks or even months down the line, and I finally okay, fine, I'll go see it. So I was like, holy shit, you guys are right, this is incredible. But it just had legs. It lasted for a long time, and it ultimately made something like 300 million, 350 million or so. But it wasn't something that was an immediate hit. So even if it wasn't how you could maybe be starting on the sequel almost immediately, I think they probably had to wait a little while before they realized, oh, this is a thing. We actually should probably do a sequel to this. And of course, they couldn't just do one sequel. They're basically doing two movies simultaneously, and they're continuing to work on the second half so that when it comes out next year, or for all I know, it might actually be finished at this point, and they just have it all in the can already. But it took a long time to do basically two additional movies and try their best to top what they'd done previously, which was no mean feat, because that was a serious high bar that they set there.
It did win for Best Animated Feature.
Nice.
The controversy was that it wasn't nominated for Best Film. And there was a legit push that it should have at least been nominated for Best Film. And because I'm hearing the same thing for this latest movie too, that it's are you going to snub it again? Are you going to just put it in because obviously it's going to win Best Animated Movie, obviously.
One would hope. Just for how audacious it is. It's literally, 5 years later, it's as audacious today as the first one was in its day. But it's at a whole other level in the second movie, though.
Oh, yeah, totally. So it'll be curious to see what... when I Google it, it even says, was Into the Spider-Verse nominated for Best Picture? People are even asking it out there. So, or Google's listening to me, whatever. Probably a little bit of both. But yeah, I thought the first one was great. I've rewatched it. And again, I'm not a big Spider-Man guy either. I've probably rewatched Into the Spider-Verse more times than I've rewatched certainly any of the MCU Spider-Man movies. I've definitely more than the Andrew Garfield movies. I think just because of how long they've been out, I've probably seen Spider-Man 1 and 2 more times. But even then, I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm not so sure. So anyway, probably 4 or 5 times I've seen it. Okay. Awesome movie. Love it. Dig it.
And so we, as opposed to last time, we actually saw Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel, opening weekend, with the hopes that all three of us would get around to recording on it. It didn't really work out that way. But we showed up, and we talked about it. having seen movies in the post-COVID era, most of the time I can catch a showing with very few people. And I had to actually work to find a showing with a few enough people for me to be comfortable. But there were still multiple times the number of people I would normally be used to seeing in the movie theater. So I knew immediately this thing was going to make some serious bank.
Yeah, it had an old school vibe where when we got to the movie theater, there were people like hanging around in front of the movie theater, like by the box office. Like I'm pretty sure they were trying to figure out when there was a showing to get a ticket for. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. That weird kind of buzz. And we saw it at 12:30 on a Saturday. So it was still a matinee. And there were like people hanging around the box office out front in like 90-degree weather. And I'm like, oh, this movie's going to make a shit ton of money. This movie's going to make a lot of money. Certainly the opening weekend.
Yeah. And I ideally, I'm an old man. I like to sit in the recliners. I would like to have comfortable seats. I don't mind paying for an upcharge if I can be someplace where I'm happy to be. And all those showings were just too full. They were all like 3/4 full at least. All the good seats would be taken. And so we ended up going to the fucking bargain basement, shitty ass, rat hole theater. And there were still plenty of people in there. The problem being is, once again, I had trouble gauging how far we were from the screen. We were way too fucking far. And we just happened, at the time we bought the tickets, there was nobody else in our row. So sometime between us buying the tickets at the theater and going to the concession stand and getting into the theater, somebody bought 2 tickets to the right of us, presumably, unless they were just fucking sneaking in there, which I wouldn't put past them because motherfuckers were talking in full regular speaking voices during the opening half hour of the movie or so. Plus I could hear them pouring what I would assume would be some sort of spirits into their cups. So they were probably drunk off their fucking asses to boot and just complete fucking dumbasses. So after about half hour or so, we finally were like, okay, I'm done with this shit. And we moved closer to the screen. There was enough room for us to get away with doing that without anybody getting mad. But this was still like the shitty ass theater. And we still were having to kind of negotiate the audience.
We saw it in like the Real D XD Turbo T1 Ninja Super Screen that was like, it's like right below IMAX, with like the sound system that like freaking blows your ass out or whatever. Like the sound is insane in this theater. Every time we have one of these podcasts and I see a movie in that theater, I'm like, you guys have got to come down and see a showing in that theater. The sound is amazing in this theater. We sat sort of in the middle, kind of towards the back. Screen's so big, doesn't matter. From the time we bought tickets, there was, I would say it was maybe half full. That shit was packed for our 12:30 showing. 12:30 matinee on a Saturday, I think was packed. There may have been some front row seats that weren't full, but the rest of we were surrounded by people. It was well represented.
And if you went to the IMAX showing, they were giving away full-size Bill Sienkiewicz posters with that. When we went to the theater, I don't know if the girl had actually gone to an IMAX showing or not, but we saw a girl taking one of the posters, and she's walking around with this full-size unfurled poster, against her body. It's like, man, it's not worth it to me to have to deal with that shit. But, remember when we saw the first Guardians of the Galaxy, they gave us this cute little print. No, this is a full-size movie poster they're giving to people.
Yeah, and this bootleg Cinemark we're at. We walk in, and I was trying to look for the popcorn bucket. They had the Shazam 2 popcorn bucket up there.
Still.
Because, of course, they still have those all. They probably had already sold out of all their Spider-Man stuff on Thursday. So all they had left were, and of course, there's no Fast and the Furious stuff left. There's no Guardian stuff left. Let's put the Shazam 2 tins back out, dude. The people probably left in the theater. They probably just cleaned them out. Oh my god! It was worth it for them not to have a commemorative bucket, just for them to have that terrible bucket.
So as far as the actual viewing experience, what did you think about the movie once you were actually in there?
I thought it was. We're not going to do a lengthy recap, folks.
Nope.
Because I'm sure everyone listening to this has probably seen it. I thought. Okay, we'll start animation, since that's the most obvious thing to talk about. Like you kind of intimated earlier, I think it was even better than the last movie. And what I really was paying attention to was that each of the different universes had their own, like Gwen's universe is like almost watercolor or oil paint.
Yeah, it has that 60s style to it, that sort of pastels and such.
Yeah.
And I think what they were doing is the guy who designed her costume, the Spider-Gwen costume, which I've always thought was a fantastic costume and relatively easy to the cosplay as. So I've seen it being cosplayed almost immediately after it was introduced. And it's just a beautiful mix of colors. And obviously they're more feminine colors, but they're not like, I'm wearing all pink. It's not like My Little Pony Spider woman, you know, but it felt girlish in a way that was still kind of cool and contemporary and tough. And that's Robbie. I think the fellow's name is Robbie Rodriguez. He'd also done a book for Image called Federal Bureau of Physics, and it was a really nice looking book. I like his artwork. I think he got canceled though because he got pissed off at some mega guy and tweeted out a picture of his own asshole. And I don't think he's worked a lot since then. But that was his style, I think, being reflected in the movie.
That was a lot to take in there. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. So it looks like they were doing. And so then obviously you had like the Shakespearean Leonardo da Vinci style vulture, and he was in his sort of sketch drawing.
He's
look.
Functioning in black and white.
And then Miles Morales' verse has sort of the like, what's the old, like, it's not zipatone. It's that old method of print where they kind of have
the color dots. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the color dots. Their whole universe kind of has the color dots a little bit. Anyway, I dug that each of the worlds had their own animation style, which I think that like that's just another level that nobody would ever consider that shit. Like they wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's a level of detail that I don't think most people would appreciate having to do, because they were like, the audience is not gonna like get enough out of it to make us have to design individual worlds at even the type of medium and media used. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they did it and it's just so awesome.
Well, and you look at something like Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. You know, you got that one little brief sequences where he's going through the different dimensions, and there's like liquid version, cubist version, so and such. Doesn't really not too much. Mostly it's about, hey, look, we have pizza balls in this universe. It's really fucking lame multiversity. And it's just so much more well thought out and so much easier to represent in animation than it is in live action. But the effort was also there too. They could have probably done something like that similar for film. You've got different types of film stock, different lenses, different cameras you can use. There's a bunch of tricks they could have used that they didn't, because they were just willing to let the special effects guys do their thing for a few seconds at a time, and then the rest of the time be lame shit. This movie is like, no, it's very well thought out. Again, you see the 5 years of effort here because it's an evolutionary leap. And look at like even Miguel O'Hara. They never say Spider-Man 2099 in my recollection. I don't think they make reference to him being from the future, but it just so happens that he always operates within the futuristic Spider-Verse that very much recalls a sci-fi milieu. And so it's like, okay, well, it's still represented even when it's not explicit.
And so that goes to my next point about the animation, is that when Spider-Man 2099 is chasing Miles through the 2099 verse, that I was in my head, I'm like, this is the most comic accurate animation I've ever seen in my life, where it was like each scene, like I think where he's like slamming, they're on like that the train to the moon or whatever. Mm-hmm. When they're going on that and he's like clawing his way after Miles, to me those were literally like I was looking at comic book panels. It's hard for me to explain, but it was literally like that is exactly how an artist would draw it, but for some reason it's moving. And like my brain, where it's like whenever they try and make animation as real as possible, like, you know what I mean? They're trying to mimic the way two humans would interact, not like rotoscoped, but you know what I mean? They're trying to do faux rotoscope. Right. Whereas this was, no, they're trying to mimic a comic book. This is exactly how the action would look in a comic book. And those are just two different things. And I can't put my finger why, but like my heart like had this weird flutter during that scene where I'm like, this is a comic book. The way they were flashing between the others to Gwen and the other Spider-Man, and they're flashing back to Miles and what's Spider-Man 2099's name?
Miguel O'Hara.
Miguel, mm-hmm. Especially Miguel and Miles. The way they were flashing from there to there, it was like panel transitions in my brain, and I'm like, this is the weirdest shit I have ever experienced. And it's just it only comes from a group of folks that are absolutely dedicated to this universe that they've built. Like they are 100% in. They're not just churning out a sequel that looks like the first one to make some more money. Like, no. They didn't settle. They were like, we didn't go far enough last time. How do we make this more like an actual comic book on the screen? And I was floored by it.
Well, and you got that great balance too, because obviously it's very stylized. They've grounded it in a reality where it feels material. It feels real. You feel like there's real stakes, but it's also stylized the way a comic book artist would be, where like Joe Madureira doesn't look like Joe Quesada, doesn't look like George Perez. They don't represent reality. They represent their vision of a reality that's not, picture perfect, photorealistic Neil Adams kind of stuff, right? So they're able to incorporate that stylistic quality, and it makes it more believable than if they tried to render it in super detailed CGI, tried to make like fucking Final Fantasy Spirits Within kind of shit, where it's like Uncanny Valley levels of attempted reality. It's like, no, they've got that perfect balance where it's real, but it's also stylized, and so you can do everything within this that you would want to do in a comic book movie.
Yeah, totally down with it. Again, I didn't expect them to go I didn't expect to be more impressed than I was in the first movie, because I've now seen it before, and I was somehow more impressed. I don't know. I don't know how they did it. It was awesome.
Well, what's funny to me too is I didn't have a chance to watch Into the Spider-Verse again before seeing Across the Spider-Verse. So what I did, I've only seen it the one time. Both movies I've seen. Well, okay, I've seen Into the Spider-Verse twice and Across the Spider-Verse once. And so I watch Across the Spider-Verse, and while I'm watching it, I'm still doing a little bit of review of it. I'm like, I'm not sure which one I like better. And then watching Into the Spider-Verse that same day, it's like, no. Across the Spider-Verse is a better movie. Like, Into the Spider-Verse was so daring and so fresh and so new when I watched it. And upon rewatching it, the Spider-Man-isms and the origin-isms are still really prevalent. Like, I always had problems where I liked the Miles Morales stuff. I liked his relationship with his uncle. I liked his relationship with his parents. What always kind of bothered me about the first movies when they got into the Spider-Verse stuff, the fucking Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir and them all ganging up and trying to jump in the kid, and just not feeling like proper representations of Spider-Man type characters, and forcing shit to make it work for the story they want to tell rather than being more natural and playing to those characters and how they should actually be and stuff. I just really didn't like the multiverse stuff in the first movie. I really just wanted to focus on Prowler and Miles, and then rewatching it, because so much of it is cliches, they're fresh takes on cliches, but it's still pretty cliche. It just made me appreciate Across the Spider-Verse more, because there wasn't a formula there. I mean, there's a little bit in the terms of we're gonna have a little bit of fun and do a little bit of cartoony stuff, and now that we've already introduced the characters, we've got a little more leeway, we can take a little more time to do stuff. But it was just much fresher and just much less reliant on tropes than the first movie was. So like, and then visually, after watching Across the Spider-Verse, sometimes I was overwhelmed. I thought it was almost too much. It was like frying my synapses and like too ADHD. It was making me tired at times because it was just so much. But then having seen that and been so overstimulated, and then going back to Spider-Verse, it's like, it's a little slow by comparison. It's a little like, it's not as, it's come across as more basic after seeing Across the Spider-Verse. It's just so much bigger. And sequels are always trying to, we're just going to go bigger and that's going to be enough. But I really do think Across the Spider-Verse is also better. It's just more innovative, more thoughtful, just more of everything in a way where, it can be somewhat overwhelming at times, but overall, I know I'm going to go back to that movie more often and try to find so many of the little things they've got in there that I probably would have missed the first time. And I'm just going to be able to enjoy watching that and rewatching that more than the first one, as good as it was.
Yeah, and so I've been going back to rewatch Into the Spider-Verse, obviously, since this movie kind of just came out. You already did it. You get bonus points for that. But I was going to say there's a positive to the simplicity of the first movie, whereas, like you said, the next movie is like overstimulation times 1,000,000,000,000, right? Like, it's just that the movie's just on crack the whole time. Like the very first confrontation with the Spot, for example, where you're just falling through holes and punching through holes, and he's punching through this hole and it's hitting this dude, and that's a gag, and it's like that gag was so fast you barely even caught it before you move on to the next gag. Like, it's just nonstop. The whole movie kind of continues that. It just is going and going. There's a couple of little parts, where they pause with his parents trying to figure out where Miles has been going and the grounding and all that stuff, which kind of calls back to the first movie again, that same pace. But those moments are few and far between compared to the first movie. So I kind of, without having watched it again, I'm giving it some credit for being a little more simple. As much as I'm with you, some of the Spider-Verse stuff there, I almost forgot about. When the next time I watched it, it was sort of like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot we got to get Spider-Ham in here, and we got to get. I kind of forgot about all that. Mm-hmm. Whereas this movie is all Spider-Ham. It's all 15 versions of Spider-Man flying at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and Peter Parker's got a baby strapped to his chest, and he's in a bathrobe the whole, and then Ben Reilly's showing up, and he's brooding and overhatched and over-rendered, and then he's goofing that he's overhatched and moody, and it's like, what is like
he literally looks like a Tom Lyle drawing for a lot of it. Yeah, it's like crazy.
Yeah, no, I think the whole time he's got the Tom Lyle animation style, and they stick to it through the entire rest of the movie. But while I'm trying to soak that up, there's like 15 other things, and I'm like, did I just see the armored spider in the background? Was that the Tom Holland Iron Man armor in the background? Like I'm like freaking out because there's so much stuff going on. So it's sort of like two sides of the coin. Both are good, but they're just so opposite from each other that the pacing of the movie is just going. And then throughout it, I'm like checking my clock because I'm like, this movie's like, it's got to be almost time to be over. This is a 2-hour movie.
Right. And that's something, even at the very beginning, I was like, did we just spend like 15, 20 minutes on Spider-Gwen? And now we're doing like 15, 20 minutes on Miles, just like establishing where they're at this particular point in time. And I do have to say, I loved, especially having watched the first one and going back to the second one, the drumming, that how they use Gwen's drumming as the soundtrack to her, like explaining where her life is now and what she's been up to, like how she became Spider-Gwen, and then what she's been up to since meeting up with Miles and stuff. And that fucking whiplash drumming going on, it's like, it really was pumping me up for the movie. But then once they spend all that time with Spider-Gwen and then they go right over to Miles and do another episodic thing with him, a setup thing with him, it's like, fuck, man, we're like a half hour, 40 minutes, and this movie hasn't even really started yet. Exactly. I did feel the length. Like that, it's a long fucking movie, but there's a lot in it. So you start to forgive that after a while because the stuff is still really good, you know? Yeah, no, totally.
But this movie is not complete. So I can't, and that's the problem. This movie has a hard cliffhanger. This is not Infinity War where the movie actually resolves and then you have a point to build off it for the next movie. This movie is legit to be continued.
Yeah, the Back to the Future Part 2 energy of this shit was for real. But also with 5 different fucking endings like Lord of the Rings on top of, like, it wasn't enough for them to have one cliffhanger. It's like, no, we're going to do 5 different things to set up for the next movie. It's like, couldn't you save this for the next movie? I don't know if we needed all of this build up right now after we've already spent 2 hours and 10 minutes in this fucking movie. Let's do another 15 minutes of, but also this happens, and also this happens, also this. I was like, fuck, guys, save something for the sequel.
Right. So I feel like as long as the next one is $1.45, $1.55, you know, and the two of them together, right? Like if the next one is in 3 hours and I'm like, come on, you had 5 hours to tell this story, I'm going to change my tune a little bit. But if I can sit down and watch them both in a reasonable amount of time and watch the whole story play out, the whole quote unquote sequel play out, I will be a little more forgiving for that. But to me, this was like an egregious stop of the story. Like, I mean, no resolution to a single fucking thing. I mean, and maybe
not just no resolution to the things they'd already set up, but they're like, oh, by the way, here's 3 more things we're going to set up right here at the fucking end. It's like, no, stop. You're set. No more setup. Please stop.
But the movie was so good, I'm also like not mad because I want to see more of this. Like I want more Miguel Spider-Man 2099. Like I want more of this. I want to see more of this.
And that's the thing that's kind of cool too, is there's not really a bad guy. Like there's no reason to think that Miguel O'Hara isn't in the right about what he's saying. Like we've already seen what happened to the Indian Spider-Man universe and how it fucks shit up and it's causing damage to the multiverse, and he's trying to stop that sort of thing from happening. There's no reason to think that he'd be wrong with regard to what's happening in Miles Morales' universe with his dad. And but at the same time, what do you think, that Miles Morales is going to roll over and let his dad die? So it's like you can side with everybody. It's a very Civil War kind of situation where it's like it's very easy. You can choose a side, but you can kind of see everybody's perspective too. They're all coming from the right place to a large degree. You can absolutely sympathize with where everybody's coming from.
Well, the Spot's the bad guy.
Except for the Spot, which is, and he's pretty ridiculous too, because he goes from such a lameoid to like full megalomaniac psycho pretty much on a dime.
Yeah, in like 30 seconds of storytelling. But I dug the twist at the end where he goes back to the wrong universe and it sent him to where the spider came from. Not to his real universe. I wasn't catching it at first. Then I was like, oh, they were like, what's wrong with your hair? And I was like, oh shit, that's what happened. They were still able to get little twists like that in there that I very much appreciated.
And they didn't cheat either, because we see the spider glitching in the first movie. I just never really connected that why was something from another universe in this universe, because we didn't know what that was at the time. The movie has so many weird stylistic quirks that we're not used to that you're not necessarily thinking about the logical ramifications of this thing that we're seeing. And then you see the sequel, it's like, oh shit, they clearly knew what they were doing there.
Yeah, the glitch means you're in the wrong universe. The spider was in the wrong universe. This is excellent stuff, folks. These are the details that we're not getting anymore in some of these movies, which shall remain nameless, because they're more just cookie cutter getting churned out for money making purposes. This is a crafted story that I appreciate. So, like I said, I can't say this movie was better than the first one because it's not even a whole. This is not a whole movie. You can't even bullshit to me. This is a whole movie. You can bullshit to me. Infinity Wars. It's a whole movie. You can. I will take some. Yes, it had some setup done in other movies that feed it, but it kind of does resolve as much as you can resolve a point or an A and a B movie. This movie is just flat out. We tried to make one long movie and we thought it was too long, so we just threw a to be continued banner up on it. Like that's kind of what happened with this movie. So I can't. I have to. I have to keep my morals here. The first movie kind of resolved itself.
Well,
so
and there is a little bit of fear that we're looking at Back to the Future Part 3 as well.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because I mean, how do you top this?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I'm more confident in saying that Across is better because having rewatched the first one again, as much as I liked it that first time, it does feel like I'm complaining about how long Across is, but Into is a little too short. Like we don't spend enough time with Uncle Aaron. We don't spend enough time with Miles. There isn't enough time period between when the other spiders jump him and when he has his leap of faith. Hello Danger. But I still got chills when I was watching the Hello Danger sequence and seeing him jump off the building and find his groove finally and stuff. But then at the same time, once they actually start fucking around with the collider and he's spending all that time fighting the Kingpin, there's too much time on that. Whereas with this movie, I think as much as I wanted it to be shorter, mostly what I wanted them to do is cut out the extra number of endings and just leave that to the sequel. At 2 hours or so, it really unfurls. I don't think there was any shortcuts. They took the time they needed to tell the story they needed to tell, and they really told it effectively. And especially setting up, Miles as being the aberration, the person that doesn't belong. They set up how, the meta text there, and the fact that this kid has always felt out of place. He's always had to live between two worlds. There's always been people who wanted to sideline him and disqualify him. And when he's on that train and he looks at Miguel O'Hara and Miguel's trying to tell him how it's going to be, and he's like, nah, I ain't doing it like that. He's so fucking cool. It's one of the things I like about Miles Morales is Peter has to be such a fucking basic bitch everyman all the time that I just get so fucking tired of his ass and his fucking old ass granny with her fucking rice cakes and shit like that. I like that Miles can actually be cool. I want my heroes to be cool. I don't want them to be fucking boring, bland people. And I love the fucking attitude. And I love the weight of those small amount of words. But just the way he looks at Miguel and the way he says those words and the fact that he tells you too, oh, by the way, I wasn't running scared. I was outsmarting you motherfuckers. This was my plan. And you followed my plan to the motherfucking letter. Fucking boss, man. I love that shit. This is a cool Spider-Man. And I know a lot of people bitch about, oh, Andrew Garfield's too cool. I want a cool Spider-Man. I don't want a fucking lame boy Spider-Man. I know that that's something that's important for a lot of nerds who are living vicariously through the dude in the suit. But me personally, I enjoy my characters to be cool. I enjoy my characters to be badasses and smart. And this is the kind of Spider-Man that I can get behind.
I'll also say I really love that they call it a canon event because that's such a comic book term. Right. And it's like, that's part of his canon. You can't remove the canon event. That's and I'm just like, nobody else in here understands why they call it a canon event, but it's a comic book term. It's a comic book continuity term. Oh,
and it's so great too, because again, since they're drawing all these Spider-Man from the comics, the vast majority of these exist, and they exist because Spider-Man is a hugely popular character, and you just can't help but collect all this weird stuff when you're that popular. Like, one of the reasons why I didn't want to see the first movie is because all this shit with the multiverse and having this one pivotal figure that's represented throughout all the universes feels very DC and it feels very Superman. But what's so great about these stories is they know that Spider-Man isn't Superman, and they play to Spider-Man's strengths, and it feels much more overwhelming when you've got all this cosmic stuff going on and you got a bunch of people who are just fucking web slinging. It doesn't feel, these guys aren't moving planets and shit. You don't know how safe you are. You know that they are out of their depth in dealing with this, and it creates much greater tension. And again, Spider-Man can't help being a hugely popular character with a Japanese version and a dune buggy from when that was a big deal and all this. It just very much like Superman, he just collected all this shit. But they found a novel way of getting it all in to the canon and making it work. And it's just so pathetic, really, when you look at what they were doing in 2018. And it was so much smaller. When you go back and you watch the movie, it's just like the 5 fucking variants. It's nothing. But then you look at how Into the Spider-Verse came out, and then Marvel started their multiverse saga. And, all of Phase 4 is supposed to be part of that. We're entering into Phase 5. So you've got all these movies, all these TV shows that are all trying to do the same thing. And they're doing it so much worse than these cartoons have done. And the cartoons understand what they're doing so much better. And they have a much more valid reason for doing the things that they're doing. It's important for Spider-Man to be represented this way because this is part of the lore. This is the expanse of this hugely popular character. And they're able to explore that where it's just not going to have the same impact that you've got Alligator Loki and Richard E. Grant Loki and Black Loki. It's just not the same fucking thing as it is with Spider-Man having legit things that have been in multimedia for 50, 60 years now. It's a whole other level. And Marvel could have still pulled this off if they had the thought, if they had a clear vision of what the multiverse was supposed to be and what they were working towards. But they're fucking making it up as they go along, and it doesn't make sense, and it contradicts itself. And you can't do this with non-iconic characters. We don't care about a multiverse of Ant-Man. We don't care about a multiverse of fucking, I don't know, Shang-Chi. It's like, and even with Thor, they're not really exploring that with Thor. We haven't seen a bunch of Thor variants. They haven't done anything with that. So here's one of the only guys that's kind of iconic that's still in the MCU, and they're not doing anything with that. Captain America, all we've got so far is Sam Wilson being the new Cap. I guess that's a variant of sorts, but it's not playing into the multiverse stuff. And I don't really want it to because I want the Cap stuff to be grounded, but they just can't pull it off the way that the Spider-Verse is pulling it off. And I think especially once that second movie comes, or the second part comes out, even if it sucks, it's still going to be so much better than anything they've done in the multiversity saga in the MCU. And we've got all these more movies coming out that's going to continue to explore this fucking tapped out, shriveled, junky vein of concept. It's just going to be fucking torture, I think, getting through Phase 5 if they continue in the direction they're going, especially after being completely outshone by Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I think, right. And they're doing it in less movies with a lower budget, right? Like, it's not like, well, they didn't have the budget to really pull. What are you talking about? They just didn't have the pure backbone of storytelling. They didn't have the effort of storytelling to really coordinate this like they've done it.
Yeah, clarity of vision. My understanding is I think the sequel cost about $10 million more than the first one. Like some pathetic, nothing amount of money from one to the, and again, just time wise, CGI running more. Like I think the first movie is 2 hours and this one's 2:20. So for $10 million more, they got 20 more minutes of and a fucking factor expansion of what they were trying to accomplish in the first movie. It's just incredible what they've done.
I will say though, just because we did just shit all over the MCU version of this with good reason. No, I'm not debating anything you say. We're rewatching Loki, and Loki's fantastic. It's such a good show. Ignore the rest of the entire Marvel. Like, we're not to the final episode where we meet Kang or He Who Shall Not Be Named or whatever, but the actual show itself of the Time Authority and Loki chasing his own variant and then kind of falling in love with himself and all this stuff. It's just really, really good. It's top notch Disney Plus television show where it feels like this probably could have just been a movie, and I think it would have done really well. So to me, that's of their multiverse stuff, that's the best one so far. Multiverse of Madness, I like because it's so Sam Raimi, and they do at least go to different worlds, and there are multiple Doctor Stranges, and there's multiple versions of the Avengers, and there's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really dig the alternate version of Avengers or Illuminati, I guess they would be.
Yeah.
But also, I'm really glad that was a one-off thing. I don't want to see those fuckers collected again, but it was cool in that one movie, in that one instance.
Right, but like the stuff Ant-Man did is not at all multiverse. They're just in the quantum realm with weird stuff. Like, that's not even multiverse. But Kang's all in it, but all it is, they're just in some shrunken world. Like, it's total limp dick. You know, there weren't going to be multiple Ant-Men. It's just, you just went to a shrunken world. You know what I mean? They're not even buying into their own concept. So at least the multiverse of madness, there was, you know, Wanda, kind of like Into the Spider-Verse's plot, where she's trying to get her kids. So she's going to different multiverses to get her dead kids back or whatever. You know, that's like Kingpin was doing.
That's true. I didn't catch that. Yeah.
Right. That's really the only multiverse story they've actually told outside of Loki and the different branches of the timeline with variants. I don't think any of this stuff is even, although we've supposed to have had two whole a phase and now the beginning of a next phase where they're talking about this stuff. Really, Loki and Doctor Strange are the only ones that have even really touched it, at least in its truest sense, in my opinion.
And I did love they even managed to reference that in Across the Spider-Verse. I love that they managed to reference No Way Home.
Doctor Strange.
And like, oh shit, it is all connected. Even the Sony universe is connected.
Yeah. Man, gotcha again, fuckers.
Yeah, but also what's sad is like so hyped about this movie and the fact that they're talking about doing live action stuff with Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales and shit. But it's like, oh yeah, what's coming up over at Sony? Fucking Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web. So it's like, oh okay, no, we're gonna go right back into the Morbius shit almost immediately after this.
I would say the only miss from this movie, and there's a chance, is that we didn't get the Eddie Brock in here. Right? Like Eddie Brock was nowhere. Shouldn't Eddie Brock pop up at some point? Is he not a Spider-Man variant in a universe at some point?
It's all very confusing. I was really glad to see Childish Gambino and the fact they have all those little like live action bits in there just to completely like where there was some liquid television in this mix, where there's just like, fuck it, we're gonna throw everything at you.
I'm just Googling Across the Spider-Verse with Venom. Maybe we missed it somewhere, but
that's the one thing I don't think. If Venom's in there at all, it's so microscopic that it wouldn't be relevant.
Oh, the Miss Chin, who is at the quickie store manager when he pops into one of the worlds.
Oh, is she from the?
She's from Venom, I guess.
Is she the person running the shop with the dried up turd blowing in the wind? Okay,
I think so.
I've only seen the first Venom and I've only seen it once, so I'm not an expert on that one.
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
but I knew she had to be somebody because I thought I heard some people make some noise in the theater. But I thought for a second, since she's Asian. I'm sorry, folks. It's just how it happens. I thought maybe she was from what was the Anywhere, Everywhere, Anywhere, All at Once.
Oh wow!
Like maybe they popped into that universe for a second. But I'm like, I think that's a little too deep of a cut. I'm not so sure they did that. So this explains it.
Boy, that's a thing too. I've got to think about which of those two movies I think are the best multiverse movie, because before this it was a lock for anything. The Michelle movie, but now I'm not sure. I have to think about it now. Which one is the best of them?
Anyway, that's on my wish list for the next movie. Give me some Venom Eddie Brock. At least a cameo. You got to have Venom. So he's the OG Spider-Man variant. Let's give some respect to the guy here. And Sony has his rights. Right?
But actually, I bought Marvel Tales when it came out, and Spider-Ham is a little bit more OG than that.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Anyway, that's it. It's a good movie, folks. Go see it. No, I have no complaints other than that it wasn't a whole movie, but it was still so good. I can't even like really gripe about that. So whatever.
One other thing I thought about too is how bad did they fuck up when they fired Lord and Miller from Solo. As fucking lame a movie as that was, and then you've seen all these movies they've done that they just fucking blow everybody's minds and they're awesome movies, and they decided they didn't want that magic in fucking Star Wars. What a moronic choice that was. What how short-sighted and cowardly that and self-sabotaging.
Oh, hold on. Maybe Venom is in it. Hold on. I could be wrong. Let me read. You can delete this in a second. Oh, damn it. Now there's an ad popping up. Never mind. I'm off this website. Doesn't matter. Yeah, they fucked up. These guys are really, really good. I'm signed. I wish they would come over to Marvel and do like an Iron Man animated movie. Why are we not just scrap all of this MCU bullshit and have these guys start doing animated MCU movies? I'm sure you can get Robert Downey Jr. to come back and do voice work. Surely you can do voice work for Robert Downey Jr. If not, just get the guy that does the Lego Tony Stark that sounds like a knockoff of him. He's like best value Robert Downey Jr.
It would be nice if they could do like an animated series or something to like fill in the adventures we didn't get to see because they were so busy telling us epic stories. They couldn't tell us like the cool in between stuff.
Yeah, but not some Disney Plus bullshit.
No, not Disney Plus bullshit. I'm talking about like, well, I mean, sure, it could be Disney Plus, but not like for the kids. But like, it would pretty much would be what it was. And it sucks.
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see it in the big theater. I think if you're paying the money to get Robert Downey Jr. back, you're not putting it on Disney Plus. But whatever, I don't think it's not happening.
Yeah,
whatever. Unless he licensed himself to some sort of fucking AI like
right,
Bruce Willis did, then they can just shit these things out all day. But whatever. Anyway, guys, good movie.
Permanent Marvelite Maximus followers include Casey Niev, Cecily Gamil, Colleen Sauger, Gregory Bouchard, Kitos2, Linux Rubash, Nick Scratch, Paula Diorio, Quattro Mundo 4, Rosie May Bean, Shala Proctor, Shane Brimfield, and Tammy Ferryman. Tumblr True Believers include Ask Blog, ask the characters listed if you'd like to interact, at Gilded Gourd, and Moss at Moss Anthium Time. Keepers of the Favorites Flame include Artificial Twins, Capital Gain Income, Chris A. Field, Otherverse Games, Chris Dunford, Chrome Hearts, Comic Book Nostalgia, Dun Chef, Dirk Ashton is finally finishing Kraken Rider Z, Ed Moore, Josh Cardwell, Julia Raoul Rainbow Edition, Ladies of Mischief Wrestling Fan Page and Gaming, Lori Miller Art and Music Creator, Mad Dragon, Manju Khalida Borgohain, Marvel Universe Online Project, Melda Rosica, Movie Matt Sirois, Neo, Nick Scratch, Nick Spence, Nucky Cheese Sakurabi Project, OC9J3XDALBSCGC, Podcaster Lounge, Rihanna Mike, Relatively Geeky Podcast Network, Rio Hatfield, Scott X, Shanna Banana, and William Voyage. Retweet Frantic ones include Between the Pages blog, CH, Divinity Rising, and Talk Nerdy to Me. Max Apocalypse was our Nuff Sayer. I really like when they make an actual poster for a movie instead of a Photoshop collage traffic jam. I think he was referring to art that was featured on the Twitter solicitations for listeners. Unfortunately, I think that the art he was referring to is probably not from one of the actual movie posters. I think that was a fan-produced piece, so I like the fan stuff too.
Face front, true believers. Stan Lee presents the Merry Marching Society of the Marvel Superhero Podcast.
Billy Hines, Canoes, Chris Lydon, Dave's Comic Heroes blog, Dr. Irving Forbush, Eugene R. Hendricks, voice actor, home studio, Gregory Litchfield, The Hammer Strikes, Random Geeky Stuff, History of Comics on Film, I Was Joe Is, JMT Productions, Keith G. Baker, Max Apocalypse, Randy Caldwell, Richard Field, Satin Tights, a Wonder Woman podcast, Superbound, Tony S. Endure and Survive, and Zandrock.
This has been a non-for-profit fan production from Rolled Spine Podcast. Any copyrighted material presented herein are presumed covered under fair use, with no infringement intended.
I saw that, okay, the new Spider-Man 3 looks pretty cool. I know they're doing a Fantastic Four movie.
It's just hilarious to me to look at Spider-Man 3 because they were supposed to, what they're doing with that movie, they were supposed to do with Flashpoint. And they pilly fucked around for so long that Marvel caught up and surpassed them. And now, whatever they do with Flashpoint, it doesn't matter if you got Michael Keaton playing one of the Batmen or something. Yeah. They're already going to look like secondhand, leftovers once Spider-Man 3 is done with bringing everybody back.
Marvel did it earlier when they did Spider-Man in the Multiverse one.
Agreed, but that was still in animation. True, this is taking it to a live-action place that nobody's ever gone before.
I believe that was kind of like to test the water, to see how the audiences react when you're like, well, there's all these multiverses, can the audience follow that? And people it's one of my favorite animation movies to watch. I mean, I watch that movie at least once a month. I fucking absolutely adore that movie. So I think they're like, you know what? We can do that. I personally am really excited. I know you're not a big Spider-Man fan. I want to see what it looks like when Tobey Maguire swings in and Garfield swings in and you have fucking Doc Ock and fucking Green Goblin, Sandman. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that's gonna be kind of cool.
I hated Far From Home. I thought that movie just was trash. Everything about it was just a 90-minute sitcom. I thought it fucking sucked, and I had absolutely no interest in seeing a third act of that shit. But it's just such a stunt, and it's going to be, what's cool about the Spider-Man is they're all still young enough and good enough shape. You could actually have them all do action set pieces and shit nowadays, where you can't be having Michael Keaton jump off of all kinds of shit and punching people all over the place and stuff like that. That's too much to ask of the man.
Well, if you have Michael Keaton coming, he's going to do the Frank Miller Batman. Mm-hmm. He's going to be the old grizzly one.
Sure. But the point is, though, is that there's never been a movie like what this Spider-Man movie is going to be. And you're right. I do think that both Sony and Marvel wanted to have their cake and eat it too, where they want to have a divorce and separate what Sony's going to be doing with what Marvel's doing. But they also wanted to be amicable, and they wanted to maybe have access in the future. And they wanted to have a partition, I think. And I obviously Into the Spider-Verse contributed to that. But this last Spider-Man movie is going to really pound home that, look, Spider-Man's still kind of in the Marvel universe, but if they're going to do shit with Venom and Morbius, that's not Marvel. That's a Marvel adjacent. That's in another universe. I think it's a good way of, again, everybody's happy. It happens, but this doesn't affect what we're doing. So, I think it's a smart play.
I think this is just Marvel's or Sony's way of being like, you can play with our toys as long as we get a cut. Like, let's be honest, Sony was not cranking out movies like what Spider-Man's making. The money they're making on those movies, Sony hasn't seen that in a long time. They haven't had anything that people were losing their shit over. I know you didn't like the last Far From Home. I loved it. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was fucking fantastic. I love the whole twist to it. I love the ending. It's one of my kids' favorite fucking movies to watch over and over and over because he loves fucking Mysterio. The whole scenes. I think it's a smart play. You have all these different Spider-Mans come in. You kind of bridge all the movies together. It's going to reignite people. I mean, my kid makes fun. We watched the old Spider-Man movies.
Mm-hmm. The 70s ones?
No. The Tobey Maguire one.
Okay.
And he was just like, I remember the first one he was like, he's not high school. He's not, would you tell me? He's too old to be in high school.
Yeah.
The first one, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I mean, Tobey Maguire was way too fucking old, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I see it, I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, dude. Like, he has crow's feet. Like, what the fuck? What's wrong? This is wrong. But my kid he really did like the second one a lot more with Doc Ock. He thought Doc Ock was just a cool character. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there talking, and he was asking me all these questions about Doc Ock.
Well, there was a long time there where Spider-Man 2 was a lot of people's favorite superhero movie for a long time there.
Oh yeah, it was mine too for a long time. But that was more. It's one of those Dark Knight moments where like everyone loves the one with Heath Ledger's Joker.
Mm-hmm.
If you rewatch, like the first Batman Begins, I really didn't realize how boring it is. It's kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
It's him chasing the fucking.
I'll tell you my story real quick. There was a garage sale, I think it was, or maybe it was a community sale, like how they have all those neighborhood sales.
Yeah.
Like a decade ago when I was still, I had a roommate and stuff. And so I happened to find a $2 copy of Batman Begins, and I'd seen it theatrically with you, as I recall correctly. So I'm like, okay, for $2, I'll buy Batman Begins. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I'll do it. And so I bought it, and I took it over to my father's place, and I put it in his DVD player when I didn't have anything better to do, and I passed the fuck out on that thing within the first act. And I've never even tried to watch it again since because it's just, I found it, I didn't think it was great seeing it theatrically, and trying to watch it at home, I was bored and I passed out. So that's my review.
I probably would agree on you that like I said, I tried to rewatch them one day. In the last when quarantine was really in effect, I was doing like these fucking marathons where like I watched the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. Fuck, that was a trial. Like I like the movies, but Jesus Christ, man, that was like almost 3 hours each, like 9 hours for a fucking day. I rewatched all the Harry Potter movies. I did the original trilogy, Star Wars. That's when me and my kid watched the first 3 Spider-Mans, or not the first 3, but the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans.
Mm-hmm.
We were just doing stuff like that. And so one day I'm like, you know what? I'm going to rewatch the fucking, what's his name? The fucking director.
Christopher Nolan.
The Nolan's Batmans. I'm going to watch him. I remember enjoying them quite a bit. I'm watching the first one. I'm like, God damn, this movie's fucking boring. Like, holy shit. Like, it's the fucking Scarecrow. Like, and it was really slow. And I guess maybe because we hadn't seen a Batman like that at the time, but it was really slow. Second one, The Joker. I'm sorry, man. Heath Ledger made that fucking movie. Enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when he was on screen. I was like, okay. Then I watched the third one and I'm like, wow, Bane is really shitty in this movie. Like, oh, wow. So I was kind of taken aback because I remember having the Nolan movies on a bit of a pedestal for a while because I was like, oh, they're fantastic. And I'm like, 1 out of 3, not a great score for these films.
No, I agree with you. I think that the first Batman of the Nolan cycle was dull. It was fine. It was okay, especially for its time. I don't think it holds up great in retrospect.
Yeah.
My review of The Dark Knight is that it was playing a lot on cable when we first got cable. And it was one of those movies where it would suck me in and I would end up watching 20, 30 minutes of it without even trying. Because it's just a really well-made movie. Even though I hate Heath Ledger's take on the Joker, I hate the Paul Giamatti impersonation. But I have to admit too that when I'm watching him on screen, I'm not seeing Heath Ledger. I'm seeing the character he's portraying, regardless of how I feel about that character. It's just a really well-made movie. The Dark Knight. What was it? The Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was playing on cable when we had a road trip. And so we'd go to the hotel rooms and, you know, they have a limited selection of channels. And it just so happened that it seemed like that movie was on every night, no matter what hotel we went to. And I'd watch a few minutes of it. And I would like, anytime they had Catwoman on screen, I tended to like it. And virtually anything else is like, this is the stupidest fucking shit. It's just a badly written movie. Setting aside anything else as far as how it was made, how it was acted, although I don't think the acting in that movie is that good either. But just at a script level, it's so poorly written that I can't give it the time of day. And so I'd watch like 5 or 10 minutes, like hate watching it. And then I'd just fucking find something to do while I was stuck in a hotel room.
Oh, real quick. We went to a just to get out of the house, like a thrift store, not a thrift store, like a flea market, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a lot of there was like 4 or 5 booths that had like comics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you know, and it was kind of cool. They had tape on the ground where like, it was really weird watching nerds trying to like stand in these lines. Cause you know, you're going through a long box. So you take a while.
Yeah.
So people are like going through a long box and then you have to sit there and wait for the guy to go through the long box because they don't want you to be like 3 feet away from him. So they kind of taped it up. So you had literally a line of guys just waiting just to go through long boxes. And you know, some of these assholes are sitting there, they got their fucking list and they're like checking their list. I'm like, God damn it, dude, it's a floppy, you motherfucker. So I kind of bypassed all them and they had a bunch of like the DVDs and some Blu-rays. I did pick up a really cool, remember those like, they're kind of like metal. They're made out of metal, the little Marvel, I guess they're like chess pieces at one time. And they came with a booklet. I got this really great, Super Scroll. Well, anyway, this is a side story. Well, anyway,
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Eagle Moss imports, right?
Which ones?
Eagle Moss. They're about, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches tall. They have a base on them. They come with a magazine that tells you about the character. They're imports from the UK.
No way.
Yeah, I've got some of those.
Dude, I got like 2 of them. I got my two of my favorite villains, the Absorbing Man, and I got the Super Scroll. So I got, it came with the magazine, which was great because it breaks down their entire history. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, anyway, so he has a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays. So I'm kind of going through them, and this dude, he's hurting. He's making deals. I bought a couple of Marvel Legends. I didn't need them, but he had a bunch of them. And I knew he needed. He's kind of like trying to make deals. So I'm like, hey, 10. He's like, 10 works. So I had bought maybe like $20-$30 from him. This was just kind of like a little extra money I had. And I'm looking at the movies. He told me, you see any movies in there? I'll cut you a deal on them. So I'm going through his movies. Nothing great. And then I find Batman Returns Blu-ray with like all the fixings on it. I'm like, how much for this one? And he was like, dude, you've been so cool today. $5. So I bought the Batman Returns Blu-ray, rewatched it. It's a damn good movie. You are correct, my friend.
That wasn't me. I haven't watched that one.
Yes, dude. Batman Returns.
I've never watched. You mean Batman Returns? You're talking about from '92?
Yes,
my favorite Batman movie.
Yes,
I love that.
The one you kept telling me about. I was like, it's funny. I saw it like once in the theaters, and you kept talking about it. And like, I saw it in the theaters with Pussycat like so long ago. I don't remember the movie at all. I mean, I remember whenever you see a fucking comic book movie list and they show like the Danny DeVito penguin as like the most disturbing penguin. I've seen those clips, but I've never sat the whole movie. So I picked it up for $5. And I remember thinking, I'm going to watch this movie because Frank is always talking about how great this movie is. So one day I just was doing some stuff around the house. I'm like, I'm going to take a break here. Let me throw it on. And it's a damn good movie. I'm like, holy shit, this movie's fucking twisted and fun.
It's kinky and it's weird and it's dark and it's got great music.
Dude, the way she kills that villain at the end was fucked up.
Yeah, give Mama a
Christopher
kiss.
Walken gets killed in that movie.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
It's got Christopher fucking Walken in it.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Dude, I was like, I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, oh, why did we not get a third of these fucking movies?
Well, and she was supposed to do a solo Catwoman movie for years after that, and it just never materialized. And ultimately, we got the Halle Berry one instead.
Dude, Michelle Pfeiffer was fucking amazing in it. Danny DeVito is fucking brilliant as the Penguin. I'm sorry, dude. Fucking what's his name? Pretty boy. In the new Batman movie.
Oh, they got fucking Colin Farrell. Yeah.
Colin Farrell better bring his fucking A game.
But here's the thing about Colin Farrell is I slept on that dude for years. He's a pretty excellent character actor.
Oh, no. I love a lot of his movies, dude. The one I saw with Mac, the Six Assassins, or...
The problem with Colin Farrell is they kept trying to turn him into the next Tom Cruise, and he's a character actor.
Yeah.
And that's where he works best, when he's doing character work, when he's able to do people that are a little off and stuff.
Well, Danny DeVito's Penguin is just fucking disturbing. Just the way he talks, his mannerisms was fucking disturbing. And I'm like,
Keaton's performance is so much better in that one.
I could see, I understood why Warner Brothers got freaked out a little bit by this, because I'm like, there's no way you could make a toy from this.
Well, that was the problem, is that after the strength of the 89 movie, you had Happy Meals for Batman Returns, and then parents were seeing it and freaking out about the content, and so that's why they didn't want to do another Burton movie, and why they started, really coming down on him, and that's how they ended up going to Schumacher, because they wanted to make sure they could keep making Happy Meals, and Burton was threatening that.
Yeah. So,
but one thing I think is very important.
I'm glad you told me to watch that movie, dude. I definitely put that on the top shelf with the good DVD or the good Blu-rays. So I'm like, I remember telling myself that's a movie I will definitely return to, because I own the first Batman. Batman '89 is my Batman. Like, that will always be my Batman. Michael Keaton will always be my Batman, and Jack Nicholson will always be my Joker. Those are just, I remember going to the theater like 8 fucking times to see that movie. I had the fucking Batman t-shirt. I had the fucking Batman logo cut into my hair. Like, I was all in on fucking Batman '89. That is my fucking Batman. I'm so disappointed that I saw Returns only once in the theaters. Did I see I don't even think I saw what Pussy got. I don't think I was with her yet.
Nah, because it was 92, man. That was a little early.
Yeah. Who did I saw it with a girlfriend. I remember, because I went with a girl, and I just remember being annoyed because they were asking me like 1,000 questions about this, that, and this. And I'm just like, I don't have time to explain this to you. Like, I wanted to watch it. You came along. I fucked myself on this deal. But dude, great movie. So good pick, man.
And that was written by the guy who wrote Heathers too, which probably didn't hurt. Yeah.
Wow.
Daniel Waters.
Okay, because
he also did.
I want to go back and I want to list. They have like a bunch of like commentary and like a mini documentary. I want to go back and watch all that shit, because I'm really. I thought the circus shit was fucking twisted, dude. Like, that really kicked up the creep factor, especially when they're attacking the city. Like, that really kicked up the creep factors. I was pleasantly surprised how good that movie was.
Yeah, all of a sudden, you're watching the Batman movie, and all of a sudden you get a season of American Horror Story walked into your movie.
Yeah.
Dude,
it just... And I kind of like the way when Penguin dies, and the penguins take him into the water and shit. Like, it's just fucking, like, weird and immense. Like, that's, to me, when... what's his name? The
Danny
director.
DeVito?
No, the director.
Oh, Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. To me, that was fun Tim Burton.
Yeah. That's before he got his head way the hell up its ass. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like Tim Burton really expanding his views. Like, that's one of those moments where you see these great artists, and they take a character and they kind of twist it up in their art style, and you're like, damn, that's cool looking. Like, that's a different look. So I loved it.
Well,
so,
and it's also funny because it's so goofy, and at the same time, it's kind of poignant and poetic. And it's like, but it's just the fucking Penguin. It's so weird.
Angry because they both kind of came from the same circles, but because he looked away. And dude, fucking Paul Rubin is his dad. Fucking Pee-wee, dude. I started laughing when I saw that. I'm like, is that fucking Pee-wee?
And I think that was post-whack job too. I think that was after he'd already like flamed out in his career.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's great, dude. I tremendously enjoyed watching that movie. Like, I think I was gonna text you that night. I didn't finish watching it because that night I was doing some shit. I think I finished. It was like on a weekday. I was off on a weekday,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished watching it. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I was gonna text him. I'm like, nah, he's probably asleep or he's at work. So I'll just hit him up another day. And I totally forgot. So right now we're talking about it. Oh, I got to bring up that fucking Batman DVD, Batman Returns.
And the reason why I wasn't catching what you were saying, I was trying to look at my shelf to see what Eagle Mosses I had. I've got the Atom, I've got Ra's al Ghul, Killer Croc, Ambush Bug, and both the classic and New 52 Martian Manhunter. Those are the ones I've got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got. Like I said, I want to pick up a couple of more. They're fucking great looking little. Like,
yeah, Ambush Bug is so cool because he's reading the magazine that came with him.
Who?
Ambush Bug.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's reading the magazine that came with him.
I just like the ones like the one I have is with the Super Scrolls. He's doing like this uppercut, and he has like the Thing's arm on flames.
Hey, didn't I give you the Absorbing Man?
No,
I could have sworn I gave you an Absorbing Man one.
Oh no.
Okay.
I bought that one there because the dude had a bunch of them, but those. I mean, I feel bad. He sold them to me for like $3. So I was like, all right, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good deal because usually, I mean, they retail for something like 15.
Oh, really?
And usually, even if you can get them clearance, they're closer to 5 to 7. So $3 is a good deal.
Damn, I should have picked up more then.
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit with it, but he was cool, and I picked up some Marvel Legend characters from him that I didn't need, but I was like, just trying to help a dude out, like, you know, we're all struggling. All right, next.
Yeah, so I was trying to be quick. It didn't work out that well. But thankfully, I don't think the Angela's going to take us too long. So I'll just do the mail real quick.